Thanks for joining us this afternoon on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Harabsky, and we begin in Rochester, where a jury returned a split verdict late last night against a woman charged in a viral racial slur incident last year, you may recall. That viral video showed a man confronting Shiloh Hendricks as she repeated a slur toward a 5-year-old child who she accused of stealing. Her attorneys said it was a freedom of speech issue, but late last night a jury found Hendricks not guilty of disorderly conduct against the child, but guilty of the same charge involving the man who recorded the incident. Hendricks was sentenced to probation, a fine, and community service. Criminal charges have been dismissed against Bishop Harding Smith. The violence prevention advocate was originally accused of pocketing money that was supposed to be paid to his violence interrupter workers. But now only his nonprofit, Minnesota Acts Now, will still go to trial. Smith spoke with our Jessica Hart about the 17-month legal saga.
Charges against the peace activist were dismissed, but he still feels like he's on trial.
People look at me as a horrible person.
Bishop Harding Smith was originally charged with wage theft. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office had to dismiss that case and then refiled charges against Smith and his organization, Minnesota Acts Now, for theft by swindle.
There was no merit to what the original claims were, and so they didn't go with that, but they kept looking and looking until they could find something to try to hang their head on.
Smith's attorney, Jordan Kushner, says a judge dismissed the theft by swindle charges against Smith, but not his organization. Court documents show the charges against Smith were dismissed because the refiled charges unnecessarily delayed his trial and resulted in prejudice.
They did find a loophole and they charged a corporation. You can't send a corporation to jail or prison. It's not clear what they would want from this nonprofit corporation.
Kushner says he doesn't understand why this case is moving forward against an entity that can still take a toll.
These charges is very hurtful because my wife and I, we both worked in the city, and my wife caught the COVID that killed her doing this job. We turned the city around, and this is the payment that I do get for doing such a wonderful job.
In a statement, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office says they disagree with the court's decision to dismiss the case against Smith. Today's dismissal was the court's decision regarding the timelines of the case, not due to a lack of evidence.
Jessica Hart reporting there. Moving on, Vance Belter will be back in a courtroom in just a few weeks to face state charges in last year's shootings of those Minnesota lawmakers. Belter was sentenced yesterday in federal court to 2 life terms plus 40 years for the killings of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, the shootings of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, and the attempted shooting of the Hoffman's daughter, Hope. Belter is scheduled to make his first appearance in state court on August 3rd. Well, less than 2 weeks remain before St. Paul leaders plan to clear the city's biggest homeless encampment. They're citing health and safety concerns for it. City leaders have announced funds to expand shelter space, but as Raya Katene shows us, many of those in the encampment worry about what that means for them in the future.
What comes next for the people living at this park is still a question mark for the people themselves.
You would take away home.
Pigs Eye Park is home to the biggest encampment in St. Paul, where the city says more than 120 people experiencing homelessness are living in tents.
I'd much rather be here than most of the shelters. Here, at least, they can't tell me to leave.
Adam hasn't had permanent housing since 2024 and has lived here since November.
I froze both feet, so I lost 2 toes last winter.
Still, he says he's grateful for the freedom and the community he's built.
Get to know your neighbors, you know the community, you have a community that you wouldn't have if you're constantly going from corner to corner every night.
Adam is one of the many people who packed City Hall on Wednesday to oppose Mayor Kaliher's plan of closing the city's 3 encampments, starting on August 5th with Pigs Eye Park.
How that makes me feel that I cannot even live in my own city, in my own backyard.
People will die. My friends and neighbors will die.
Some opposed to the mayor's plan say some people don't feel welcomed or safe at shelters and that long-term solutions should be the priority. Meanwhile, the city says the closures are part of the mayor's plan to implement long-term solutions, including expanding services and alternative housing options, but that living in public spaces like parks is unsafe.
We went to higher ceilings for more space. windows for trauma-informed.
Preparations to welcome in more people at Union Gospel Mission Twin Cities Men's Shelter are underway, where CEO Pam Stegora-Axberg says they've recently added 50 more beds and are ready to help.
We are both expecting an increase and we are hopeful there'll be an increase because we want an opportunity for people to take that first step, and we will walk alongside them.
We're here to welcome them, and I'm there letting them know.
Chaplain Sammy Watkins is spending time at the encampments to let people know help is available.
Behind every tent is a story and a person.
As they figure out what comes next.
We don't really know. We end up in the same situation.
Raya Katania reporting. That nasty stomach bug outbreak is getting much worse, with cases now reported in 4 more states. New Cyclospora cases have been reported in Illinois, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania. That brings the total to 9 states and 12,000 cases so far, with the largest outbreak in Michigan. Health officials believe the outbreak might be tied to iceberg lettuce from Mexico. So far, no cases tied to this outbreak have been reported in Minnesota nor Wisconsin. President Donald Trump is vowing retaliation against Iran, saying he's considering a, quote, massive attack, end quote, after Houthi rebels struck 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea. That attack pushed international oil prices above $100 a barrel for the first time since May. Richard Engel has the latest on the war with Iran.
For the 13th straight night, the U.S. military has carried out attacks in Iran, and every time Iran has responded by attacking American bases and troops in the region. And now this region is bracing for potentially an even bigger escalation after President Trump said that he is considering a massive attack against Iran, bigger than anything he has carried out so far. Iran not backing down, saying that President Trump is looking for an excuse for aggression. Here in Israel, they are already taking precautions with bomb shelters opening up to the public in several cities. Airlines in some parts of the region have been canceled, flights diverted. So there is an expectation that things could get worse. There was also this new front that is opened with the Houthis, an Iranian-backed militia in Yemen, attacking Saudi ships in the Red Sea, and that has rattled markets around the world, causing international oil prices to spike. And Arab officials that we've been speaking to are increasingly frustrated by President Trump's threats, the military escalation, and the lack of diplomatic progress, with one official telling NBC News that, quote, "We have no clue where this is going," another adding, "It's only getting crazier." Richard Engel, NBC News, Jerusalem.
Data centers are quickly becoming a key issue for many voters heading into this year's midterms. Many in Minnesota are not fans, as we found in our KARE 11 and Star Tribune Minnesota poll last month. 63% said they oppose a data center in their town. Now, President Trump is vowing to make companies pay for the soaring energy costs from these facilities. Here's NBC's Alice Barr.
Hi there. More than 3,000 data centers that power AI have been built across the country, bringing backlash from many communities and leaving local, state, and now federal leaders scrambling to respond. In the national reckoning over artificial intelligence, the massive data centers needed to fuel the AI boom have become a flashpoint of their own. And across the country,
I went door to door. Everybody is extremely against this.
Local communities are fighting back against their construction.
It just changes the entire environment right now. Right now, it's beautiful, it's peaceful.
On Thursday, President Trump announced a new pledge seeking to keep surrounding home and business owners from bearing higher electricity costs because of the huge amount of energy the rapidly growing number of centers requires.
It's only fair that the cost of building the new infrastructure required to meet this demand should be borne by the corporations themselves, not by the American consumers.
The president said nearly 200 stakeholders have signed the pledge, from utility companies to developers, and 23 governors, all Republican. New York's Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul is now the first to sign a statewide moratorium on data center development for a year.
We're not just going to get swept up in this Wild West gold rush. We're going to step back and make sure we're not hurting communities in the process.
She cited concerns about power and water usage and environmental impacts that local governments nationwide have been wrestling with, from a pause and new task force in Charlotte, North Carolina, to a moratorium in Marion County, Indiana.
This is my kids' future. This is the future of our planet.
While President Trump points to new jobs and competition.
If we don't do this, we're going to be left behind.
In the global AI race. Recent analysis by the consulting firm ICF estimates that utility bills could rise by as much as 40% over the next 4 years if the cost to power new data centers is passed on to consumers. The growing concerns now a big issue in the upcoming midterm elections. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Disappointment today for hopeful Timberwolves fans as the LeBron James has announced he's taking his talents to Philly. The highly sought free agent and NBA legend made the announcement on social media that he'll play for the Philadelphia 76ers after leaving the Lakers. The Wolves were considered to be among the top contenders for LeBron in the sweepstakes, with Meet Minneapolis even making appeals to King James on billboards. James says this will be his last decision, and that he even strongly considered retirement. It is All-Star Weekend for the WNBA, and Minnesota is going to be well represented at the game in Chicago. Not only are several Lynx players on the roster, including rookie sensation Olivia Miles, but also Minnesota native and Dallas Wings star Paige Beckers is captain of one of the two teams. The WNBA All-Star Game will be played tomorrow night at 7:30. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.